Welcome to Coleman Report Live, and I'm Bob Coleman. We're talking Main Street and the small business lenders who help it grow. Love doing this presentation for you every day. Lance, good to see you. Thank you. I know this is your second love. Katie, probably your third or fourth. It's always good to see Katie. Hey, questions. Hey, let's, before we do anything, Lance, I'm going to do some cleanup on questions that we got from Russell, Meredith, and Kara. We're getting these questions. Give us a little oversight. The first one's the easy one. Russell asked us a question. Hey, we have a borrower who applied for forgiveness, and let's assume only half of it was forgiven, and they're on the hook for the other half. Is there an appeal process, and what should the bank and what should the borrower do? Does the bank have to do anything?
There is a forgiveness appeal process in PPP, and the forgiveness appeal process starts when you're denied full forgiveness. And it can only be in certain areas, Bob. For instance, the SBA determines you were not eligible for the PPP loan to begin with, and that's why they denied the forgiveness. Or the bank could have made the decision to deny forgiveness and not, the bank could have made the decision. Another would be determination that you were not eligible for that loan amount to begin with. Or, another example is the borrower could be determined to have used funds for ineligible purposes.
All right, let me focus on that one, Lance. What happens if SBA says, hey, that was ineligible, but the borrower said, oh, wait a minute, I'm within my 10% for this or 20% for that, and I disagree with your calculation. So first of all, from the bank's perspective, does the bank have to do anything?
Well, the bank provides the borrower information on the forgiveness decision. The borrower, once they get that, if they choose they want to appeal, they have 30 days from notification of the non-forgiveness decision to file their appeal. There is actually an Office of Hearings and Appeals, OHA is the acronym for it, at SBA. The borrower is required to, and I can't list it all right now, Bob, but a litany of information about the PPP loan.
What is the source? Where can we direct people?
Well, there's a CFR on appeals.
Okay.
Katie, if you could find that and post it, but there's a CFR on appeals. But the appeal, again, the borrower has 30 days from notification of the decision to appeal. There's quite a bit of information that they have to submit to the Office of Hearings and Appeals. There is an email address related to appeals by the borrower. It is olitservice@sba.gov.
Can you put that in the chat box? Can you repeat that again? And Joseph put it in the chat box.
It's olitservice@sba.gov. But they can appeal. Now, they can't just appeal because they say, I don't like it, you didn't approve it. It has to fall under the, was it the wrong, did SBA say they received the wrong loan amount? Did SBA say they were not eligible? Did SBA say they used the money for ineligible purposes? Or did the lender deny the forgiveness application?
Let's assume the lender made an error in the initial calculation. What do we do in that situation?
You're going to submit, the borrower needs to submit an appeal.
Is the lender on the hook for anything?
That I don't know, Bob. That's a good question. But I think like I said, the main issue is there is a process, and I talked about the basics. And if you have a borrower who wants to appeal, like I said, you can Google PPP appeals and get the information. but there is a process, and the important things is it cannot be a frivolous appeal. It has to center
Lance,
around.
in your experience, is this an exercise that's worthwhile, or is it Don Quixote windmills?
It depends on how much money it is, Bob. If somebody has $2,500 PPP loan and they want to appeal, it may require more effort to appeal that forgiveness decision than it would just to pay it back over 5 years, a 5-year period. But if it's a larger PPP loan and they're denying forgiveness, it's worth going through the process.
Does the borrower need some type of representation, i.e. legal, consultant, above and beyond, or?
That would be up to the borrower, Bob, and depend on the complexity of the appeal.
All right. Yeah, I understand, but real world, can they navigate this on their own, or are they going to need help, Lance? Let's assume it's a large number.
Okay, Bob, this is merely an opinion.
We won't hold it.
It's just like anything else, Bob. No, I'm not going to give representation on a small appeal. I'm going to go through the process myself. Something, I don't know what the dollar mark would be, Bob, but something that's complex enough to make it worth your while to engage legal counsel.
50,000. You see it, you know it when you see it. How's that for an
I think you're going to know when you see it. I'm not appealing anything small, Bob. Say $10,000 and under. But if it's significant enough, I do think the process, when I was looking at the information that needs to be submitted, I think a lot of borrowers would need assistance with gathering that information.
Very good. And one more time, just go through. Okay, let's assume that they're on the hook. They have to make payments during this appeal process. These aren't stayed, correct?
My understanding is they would need to continue to pay payments on the SBA PPP loan.
And let's go through this one more time. Let's assume we were in the first adapters. We funded these loans back in March of 2020. And now we have SBA hasn't issued a decision. And now the payments are starting to ring up. We've had people who said they talked to SBA. One says hold off, another says start collecting payments. What in reality, what do we do?
I'm going to start collecting payments.
Even though it's murky, it's unclear.
Well, you don't know what the outcome of the appeal process will be.
Well, no, I'm talking about the initial forgiveness process.
Oh, the forgiveness process. So, you've got your covered period plus 10 months. Once that time period is complete, payments should start in the next month.
Okay. Very good. All right. Thank you very much for that, Lance. We missed your in-depth analysis of it. Hey, poll question number 1, Katie, have you switched from legacy SAM to the modernized SAM? Sounds like missile systems. What are we talking about here, Katie?
Yeah, so this is the system award management, and the SBA put out a notice I guess a few days ago now, but there's a lot more information on it now, that they have updated to a new modernized version of SAM. Mostly the same content on the site, but there are a few things to be aware of. The homepage, for example, has been completely modernized and does look quite a bit different, but all of the same information is still there on that page. The other thing is the workspace has been completely modernized to now have what appears to be widgets. And you can use those widgets to manage entities and things like that. So it is mostly just a facelift to it. They did change a couple terms, which I have here. For example, instead of entity registration viewer, it just says viewer now. So it is things to be aware of, but not too many changes. Most of it is common sense changes there.
When see, results 18% have, 20%, 26% have not. Half of you have no idea what we're talking about. is there a deadline for the lender to do this, Katie?
So it's not so much a deadline as the website's just been merged, and that just happened here on Monday. So it is entirely possible that they haven't used sam.gov since Monday, since these updates, but they will, of course, have to start using this. So it's good to be aware of and to begin familiarizing themselves with the new changes.
This morning, SBA released the Inspector General report of their top challenges for SBA. Let's start with an easy one. Have you had to make a referral to the SBA OIG? %, have, 79% have not, Lance. Is that reasonable?
Well, I think depending on the level of PPP lending that they did, it's going to be hard for me not to anticipate some referrals to the Inspector General, because as you work through the process of forgiveness, you're probably going to find some bad players in the PPP loan game.
Lance, what is the practical implementation of this? When are you going to send an email to them? When, I mean, at what, again, is it, you know it when you see it, or is there something, do we have to report a feeling?
Yeah, I think you know it when you see it, Bob. When you detect fraud in the PPP loan program, particularly in your portfolio, you're going to refer to the Inspector General.
What about if you think perhaps one of your employees was involved with that? Do we somehow they made an error or whatever? Do we just sweep it under the rug and keep our fingers crossed, or are we mandated to report?
If it was just an error, Bob, I mean, not a malicious error, just an error, you're going to communicate with the SBA and try to correct the error.
Okay. All right. But I guess what I'm getting at, you have it's in the SOP, you have a responsibility to report it if you see it.
Yeah, any suspected fraud or abuse of the PPP or 7A or 504 program needs to be reported to the Inspector General.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm saying this isn't maybe not. It's mandated. Okay.
You want to have reasonably sound footing for a referral, Bob. I mean, you can't, you know, you got a PPP borrower that all of a sudden
I don't like the way Lance Sexton wears. I don't like the shirt he wore. I think something's going on.
It needs to have some legitimacy.
Very good.
But again, if you suspect fraud, you have a reasonable presumption that fraud occurred, you want to make a referral.
Katie, we're going to ask, this is your opinion, so we'll compare with the SBA management. What do you believe is the top challenge for SBA management? Economic relief programs susceptible to fraud risk. SBA needs to improve oversight of their IT investment. Identification of improper payments, i.e. those are payments on the lender guarantee for the 7A program that should not have been made. Let's see, 2/3 say susceptible to risk, 20% say let's beef up the IT, 15%, 1 in 7 of you say SBA is not doing a good enough job, or they're paying too much in guarantees, and they should be going for more repairs and denials. Katie, tell us what the report says.
Yeah, so the report lists about 8 different challenges, and these all, of course, were on that list. We'll get into those a little bit more later on, but definitely that fraud issue and economic relief programs was a huge topic this year and continues to be something the OIG is still very much looking into. Looking at just a kind of an overall summary of what this report is saying, during the last 6 months, the SBA OIG issued 12 reports, 81 recommendations, and investigated 119 cases in which there were indictments. There are 31 convictions so far, so definitely working on that. A lot of this is PPP. However, it was also looking at 7A as well, and in general SBA programs. So looking at, oh, go ahead.
No, finish up, then we'll go to the next slide. I apologize, I thought you were done.
Yeah, so overall, the SBA OIG says, based on their investigations and audit work, they have been able to recover and save $85.4 million during this semi-annual period, which is very significant, much larger than previous years.
Bob, my local news had a story. It's funny how we think about PPP fraud. Local news had a story where the FBI showed up at a house and they were rolling out a Rolls Royce and a Porsche. And you know what my immediate thought, I mean, it could be many things, but my immediate thought, PPP fraud. That was the first thing that hit my mind.
Yeah, not to denigrate Porsche owners, but yes.
Yeah, but when you see the FBI loading up a Porsche and a Rolls, that was the first thought that hit my mind.
Yeah, maybe we can be snarky and say the PPP program really stands for the Lamborghini Recovery Act. My first question on this chart for both of you is, do we even use a phone call, any phones anymore? And what is that thing in the middle of the circle? I haven't seen it. Oh, it's a headset. Okay.
Yeah, this is talking about hotline phone calls, and they specifically created this graph because it is so remarkably high this year. Looking at the total, if you wanted to quickly add that all up, the OIG received 61,000 complaints this period within the last 6 months, 150,000 in the last year. And you contrasting that to 2019, the entire year, there were only 742 complaints. So all of these numbers for each one of these complaints is definitely higher than that. So we are seeing a lot more complaints, but this is good because that means they're going to be able to catch things. They've been able to make a lot more adjustments this time, and we didn't, as far as we can tell, have as much PPP fraud in this more recent round. So definitely is helping.
Yeah. And I'm all for full disclosure and transparency, and let's call it what it is fraud, but let's put everything into context and understand the fraud is manageable, it's minimal, it was planned. And what's interesting, Lance, is the last time this went around, and again, I apologize for the history lessons, but 2008, 2009, all this money was dumped into the economy, and it went to the larger banks, Wall Street banks, AIG, General Motors, et cetera, et cetera. And who went to jail? Community bank presidents. And the indictments were 5, 6, 7 years later and ruined a tremendous amount of lives, and it was horrible. This time around, who's going to jail? The fraudsters, the borrowers who committed the fraud. Because what they would allow is they would allow the fraudsters to turn against and testify against bank management. There were a lot of these where the fraudster was testifying to go for the bank. Department of Justice isn't doing that this time around, which I'm glad there's an adult in the room that says, okay, this is good. And there's just so many horrible stories of the TARP program of going after these community bankers. And how many Wall Street bankers were indicted? One. And I've always told the story, watch that Abacus video. Abacus is the Chinese bank in New York where they put everyone in a chain gang, the entire bank. Wow. Okay, I'm off my soapbox, and I'm out of time. Here are the challenges. Real quick, Katie, give us a 30-second summary.
Yeah, these are just the challenges. There are 8 of them, SBA's economic relief programs, and fraud risks within that is definitely the top issue that the OIG is focusing on. They're also looking at data and eligibility concerns, improvement of oversight of IT. These are all things that have been discussed in their previous OIG reports. This is just their top concerns kind of consolidated. So it is nothing really here is unusual or unexpected.
Yeah, number 6 is the SBA that will be on the list, and they're saying, hey, we still think we're paying too much to the lenders to satisfy these guarantees, and they call that an improper payment. So
that's been talked about for years, because when I was deputy at the center, we were conducting IPERA reviews, which was reviews of potential improper payments. That's always been on the list and probably always will.
Yeah. Now, SBA acknowledges, and they're willing to accept a certain percentage. I don't have those stats at my fingertips. So they're willing to acknowledge that, hey, we understand we're going to make errors, and we understand that, but we don't want to go over those percentages. I'm not going to go into that right now. Real quick, and again, apologize. Because of my rant we're going over, Meredith says, I referred something to OIG, have not yet heard back from them. Do they even get back to you?
You made the referral. I would be patient. The graph Katie shared earlier, the enormous volume of referrals probably causes the response to be slow.
And here's Meredith's follow-up question. We think the borrower provided us bad information. We didn't do the second round as we could not verify it, but we did do the first round. So what do? Do we accept the forgiveness app from him and then submit the second? Well, it's too late. It's a denial, or do we submit to SBA and let them decide?
Well, if you think you've got bad information, I don't know how you could approve a forgiveness application. You're going to deny the application and refer to the Inspector General.
And what about the forgiveness? Same thing?
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Deny the forgiveness application if you don't feel comfortable with the information.
Russell says, as long as a forgiveness app has been submitted within the 10 months from the end of the covered period, our payments due while the forgiveness is being reviewed and approved. You said yes, you're going to start those payments, correct?
10 months after the forgiveness period has ended, payments start, or the next month.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Russell and Meredith. And I think, we talked about appeals. And I think we got that. If there's anything left over, we'll talk about tomorrow. We're going to do restaurants next Wednesday in Lance. That's going to be exciting. I look forward to working with you on that. And it's going to be a great program.
Absolutely.
It really is. It's specific. It's specific on SBA financing, on what we need to do for SBA. And we talk about, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about numbers and how to handle numbers and when we should go. What triggers a GP, because you may not like the numbers and there's no revenues in 2020, but there were 2019. We're going to deal with all that stuff. Hey, thank you all for joining us today for Coleman Report Live and for supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time.
Have a great day.
Have a great day.